For months, I had felt like a ghost in my own home. My wife Lena moved around me like I was furniture, silent, distant, eyes locked to her phone or her thoughts, or maybe to someone. I couldn't see anymore, and I told myself it was just a phase, maybe. She was tired or stressed. Maybe love changes after years. Together, maybe comfort becomes quiet, maybe. Marriage dulls the flame, but there was something colder than comfort in her silence. Something final, and I began to vanish. Inside my own skin. I cooked dinner, I brought her coffee in the morning, I asked about her day, and she said, fine, every time the same tone, the same face, and it ached somewhere deep in me where I still remembered her laugh, the way her hand used to find mine without asking, the way she used to trace circles on my wrist while I talked, the way she looked at me like I was the only man in the world, and now I was a wall to her. I felt it, but I stayed because love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's stubborn. Sometimes it's staying even when it hurts because you hope maybe, just maybe the version of her that loved you still exists somewhere. Beneath the silence, and then came that night at Sam's party. We weren't supposed to stay long, just show up, smile. Leave early, but Lena was quiet as always, so I drifted into the crowd, talking to old friends, drinking slow, and then she walked up to me, a woman I hadn't seen before, red dress, wild curls, eyes sharp and warm. She laughed at something I said. She touched my arm, she leaned in and said, "You're hot just like that," like it was a truth, not a flirt. And I laughed, surprised, unsure what to say, because I hadn't felt seen like that in forever, and that's when I felt Lena behind me. She wasn't saying anything, but her presence cut through the noise, and I turned and saw her eyes on me, but they weren't cold, they weren't blank. They were burning. She walked over, took my hand without a word, and kissed me hard, right there in front of everyone. Her fingers clutched my shirt, her breath hitched, and when she pulled back, her eyes searched mine, like she was seeing me for the first time in years, and then she whispered mine and walked away. Ride home was silent, but it was not the silence I was used to. This one was alive. It pulsed between us like thunder before the storm. She gripped the steering wheel like she was holding back something huge and wild, and I looked out the window, pretending not to feel the heat rolling off her like a second sun. And when we reached home, she didn't speak. She just walked inside, kicked off her shoes, and stood there in the hallway, her back to me, and I stepped inside, slow, careful not to break the moment, because something had changed. Something had cracked open in her, and I was afraid to breathe. And then she turned her face, flushed her chest, rising fast, and she walked straight to me. Grabbed my shirt again like she had at the party, but softer. Now trembling, she asked, "Do you want her?" And the pain in her voice made my throat close, and I shook my head. "I don't even know her, Lena. I didn't know you could still feel something like that." And she broke then, not in tears, but in movement. Her hands touched my face like she had been starving for skin, and she said, "I thought I lost you. I thought I killed what we had, and I didn't know how to come back. I didn't know how to tell you I was scared and tired and not the woman you married anymore." And I whispered, "You are still her, Lena." She never left. You just stopped looking. And she kissed me again, slower this time, and her hands moved to my chest, and I felt the heat rise between us, something raw, something old and new, all at once, and we made love there on the hallway floor. Like strangers finding each other, like lovers fighting for something sacred, and when we lay together after her fingers tangled in mine, she said, "I saw the way she looked at you, and I wanted to tear the world apart." And I told her I only wanted her always. Had even when she was silent, even when she was gone, and she looked at me with tears that didn't fall, and she said, "Then let's start over from here. From now, from this." And I held her tighter, as if holding her could rewrite the past, and maybe it did, because that night the silence broke, and in its place, there was breath, there was heat, there was us again. Morning after felt like spring after a long, long winter. Sunlight spilled through the blinds, soft, gold, and slow, and I watched Lena sleep, her hair across the pillow, her mouth slightly open, her hand still holding mine, like even in sleep she couldn't let go. And I memorized her face in that quiet moment, because it was the first time in so long she looked at peace, like she wasn't carrying something heavy behind her eyes. And when she woke, she blinked and saw me and smiled. Not the polite kind, Not the one that says, I'm fine, but the one that reaches her eyes, the one I had missed more than I knew, the one that used to make me fall in love with her every time, and I said good morning, and she stretched, groaned, and pulled me close and whispered, I don't want to lose this. And I said then, let's not, and we didn't rush. We stayed there in bed, wrapped in warmth. In quiet, in something new that felt like something old, and later we went out for breakfast, and she held my hand in public. Again, like we were young again, not because she had to, not to prove anything, just because she wanted to, because that touch mattered again, and people looked at us and smiled, and I wondered if they saw what I felt, the slow rebirth of something broken made whole again, and days passed, then weeks, and Lena talked more, she laughed more, she touched me more, and I did the same. We reached for each other again, like we remembered how, not just out of habit, but out of hunger and healing. And one evening, while we were cooking, she looked at me, flower on her cheek, and said, I think I forgot how lucky I was to be yours. And I said, I never stopped being yours, Lena. And she kissed me in the middle of the kitchen while the pasta boiled over, and we laughed like fools. And I knew then we were no longer surviving, we were living again, because she no longer needed someone else to remind her I was worth wanting. She remembered all on her own, and that was the real return. Not the kiss, not the night, not the jealousy, but the look in her eyes. When she saw me again, like I was home, like she had just come back to where she belonged, and this time she was staying.